Old style knee pads. I always tell guys this. You know how we have the knee sleeves today? I always tell the young guys, they tell me they want padding, they need to get a real pad. I tried those things, and I can't stand that sleeve from here to here on my knee. About 10 years ago, a couple of my guys that I was wrestling with and coaching, every day they were harassing me to wrestle with them more. And at the end of the season, my knees were so beat up, I couldn't get down on them like this. And I was saying, I think I'm history as a coach. And I went and got their old sleeves, and I'm supposed to be doing some clinics and things in the spring, and I couldn't get down and put my knees on them. And they were worse. And I went out and got the old college knee pads. I don't think I'd hardly worn them since I was in college. I got these, and I've been at it ever since. So it gave me at least another 10 years of being a coach. We'll see how many more years we get. I'm going to begin. My key subject this morning, I'm going to do some things on roles. Probably have more questions asked of me, more requests to teach roles than anything else. And often because of, I have no clue who gave the name to the Peterson role. I am accredited with it, particularly when I go to the East Coast, as having invented it. And I hardly ever use it. I occasionally coach it, but I only use it occasionally as a competitor. But I do a lot of different roles, and I'm going to show you kind of a survey of them today, and a lot of different things can be done there. But before I do, a couple little things that I want to, first of all, I want to finish up something that Coach asked me over here, and I don't remember who it was or if he's here even today. He asked me about other double leg finishes. And come on out, man. Give me your name again. Clint? Clint? Okay. Clint's going to help me, and yesterday we didn't have a big enough guy. He was 210. I thought it was great. We'll see how Clint does if he beats me out here too bad, size-wise. But I mentioned that John has 30 ways to finish, 30 ways to set up a double, 30 ways to finish. And I'd like to not show 30 of them, but one other thing that is very common and very useful, I think. John and I did a lot of this kind of thing. When we would shoot in, go to the knees, turn. And I want you to notice after what I said yesterday, I didn't drop to my knees. I stepped and drove to the knees to get deep underneath like this. Lifted the shoulder and take him through. Crunched in, squeezed in tight on those knees, and take him through. We did a lot of mileage out of that as competitors, and I think now as coaches we do a lot of that. We also, you can do that same kind of turning. It's interesting. I tend to do that one on my left side. I do the other one up here. It's kind of more of a high crotch type of thing, where you come here and then drive across to the side. So you hit on an outside single here and driving hard across, getting that far knee. However, when you do this one, particularly the first one, I drive here into this position. There's some things that the other man can do in countering it. And John and I, going back and forth, really began to understand this, of me learning counters while he's trying to do his doubles. And he would come in, I would lift him up, and then try to hip toss him to the side. Well, I evidently hadn't learned this well enough, or hadn't done it on him enough, before. I told you yesterday about going to the national freestyle tournament and getting beat 9-0, ending up fourth in that tournament, and I'm trying to make the Olympic team before the summer's over. Well, John did the same thing. He finished fourth as well in that tournament, only he got beat 15-1. We had the technical fall like we do now, so he just kept getting thrown to his back. And the way he was getting thrown to his back was off a double leg in which he was going to his knees and lifting and trying to turn like that. I can say this today because I've talked to him about it. Steve Combs is the man who did this to John. And Steve, shoot in on me, Steve caught him here and took him to the side as John was trying to lift. And I'll never forget this because it's kind of one of the things that sticks in your mind. Talk about building confidence. This is the kind of thing that happened. John goes home and he says, I'm wasting my time. I committed this whole winter to do nothing but train to make the Olympic team. John had never won a national tournament. The highest he'd ever placed was 5th in the NAIA. And now he's trying to make the Olympic team. And people around him are thinking or people a ways away are telling him he's nuts. People close are telling him, John, you could do well in this thing. Keep at it. And he came back home, and I think he probably heard a little bit of this. It was hilarious. People would come and tell me that John was nuts, but they wouldn't go tell him. And they asked me, what is he doing? He's training for the Olympics. He didn't really think he could make that team. Well, he'd like to. Yeah, he does think he can. I'm not about to tell him he can't. But when he came back 4th place and having been beat 15-1, when Steve had been on the previous Olympic team, he knew he was in trouble. And he was ready to quit and go back home. He graduated from college the previous spring. I was still in my senior year, and we were training at Iowa State together. And he said, this is a waste of time. And Gable was at Iowa State as a grad assistant, of course, training there himself. And Gable heard John say this, and I'll never forget him saying this to John. You know, you're getting beat on the same move every time. John says, I know it, my double leg. It's the only thing I know. I can beat my favorite move. How am I ever going to win against anybody? He says, but you're going the wrong direction. And some of the perception of Gable at that point, before he really was into serious coaching, is he understood that John was going up, and that's why he was getting lifted. And he told John to turn down like this on his knees. And John started doing this. We would go in, have a little extra practice, I remember, at night. And it was mostly just drilling. And I would walk out of the wrestling room like this. Because John would hit his double leg the same way, still going in, driving into his knees, and at this point, cutting here, hop back up again, Clint. Or here, and then back this way. And you can see the awkward position the knees are in. So ever since, we just call this a knee buckle double. We're going to come in and we're going to, instead of up and lift, we go in and cut down. Kids should really know how to do both of those. Go in and lift, in, up, and down. And you can see immediately, Clint does not like that in the knees. And I go home and say, man, life, please no more. The next night, I do it again. Now, you gotta watch telling stories like this because this is true. And 2.5 months later, John goes to the Olympic trials and he has to wrestle Steve Combs again. John wrestled his match, and I had to start mine in the middle of it. So I only saw the beginning of his match. I came off my match, and John was sitting on the chair in the corner of my mat. And the guys who had been there coaching me came out and greeted me and commented to me about my match. And all of a sudden the thought hit me. I always do this as brothers. He'd be on the mat often, one weight class below me. Often he would start, and then I'd have to miss his match and go and wrestle mine. And so we would often say, man, I want to watch you, but I can't today. And he'd say that to me, and I'd say, what happened? And all of a sudden the thought, I'm talking to my other guys, my teammates, whatever, and about the match, and these guys, when you go to that level, you don't really have a coach yet. Your teammates become your coaches. So those were the guys who were coming out here, and they were commenting about my match. And all of a sudden that thought hit me, well, what about John and his match over there? And I wanted to go look, and they said, don't you know yet? And I said, no, what happened to John? And I turned and I saw him there. And I looked at him, and here he is. He's tired. He's recovering. And there's this kind of blank look on his face. And I look at him, and then I say, John, how did it go? And I always say this. It was like a grin started at his toes, and went up, and then covered his face. He had beaten Steve Combs 7-0. And I believe every one of those points were 1 point. 4 or 5 of them were 1 point double leg takedowns. Probably 10, 15 years later, I saw Steve at a tournament, and I told him a little bit about what had happened in John's drilling. He says, you know, I've always wondered what took place. He says, I went to that tournament knowing that I was going to have some tough people, but I never thought John would be a threat to me because I'd beaten him so bad earlier. And John went on to win the tournament. And so because of that, obvious, Petersons will never forget the value of learning to drive through and lift, but also during drive, step in and turn. Okay? So, change of directions is key. And I'm going to talk about that in my roles now in the next few minutes. A couple other little things, man. I've got some comments from different ones of your questions. And I want to just make comments. Some of you come over and got the flyers off of that. I don't know if you call this promotion or what. Call it what you wish. 10 years ago when I came down here and was at this clinic, within the next year or so, I came back to Iowa 4 times, I believe it was, to do assemblies and clinics in their schools. And since that time, I worked another job. I was actually an assistant pastor in a church on a part-time basis, and I didn't do a lot of that. I'm no longer in that position anymore, and I can say to you, if you want me to come and do some of those school assemblies and clinics, I'd be willing to coordinate schedules and things to do that. You can take some of the flyers and coordinate doing that. Yesterday I had a flyer up there, Building Good Memories for tomorrow. The second one here is on doing your best for someone else. A lot of things that I talk about on that. Setting right goals, some ideas on working, and then daring to be different. These are all themes and points in which I touch on a lot of times in school assemblies where you got all the student body, not just a bunch of wrestlers. And if those kinds of themes would be of interest to you, that you could say, use me to promote wrestling in your school, elementary school, all the way through to your high school, I'd be more than happy to coordinate doing that. Please don't ask me to do it next week. Okay? Give me some time to put it into the schedule. AT&T, or the phone companies have all changed, and some of my literature still has my old phone number of area code 414. And I don't know what you had down here in Iowa, but in Wisconsin, we've adjusted 3 times because of all the new phone numbers that are needed. And my new area code is 920. So if you want to call me, just change that from what's on there. Otherwise, this modern age, I am now figuring out how to use my computer and email, and if you want to communicate with me that way, it's ben@campofchamps.org. The camp name that we use for our summer wrestling camps is in it, so it's ben@campofchamps.org. If you want to communicate with me some more, let me know and we'll do some things there. Just a second. I do have one other thing that I wanted to say here. You guys work at, as coaches, I'm seeing this theme, and I just kind of maybe highlight it again, of working at the balance of building self-confidence, building confidence in a kid that is proper. When we talk about this word pride, it has problems. We talk about team pride. We want confidence and a unity amongst them. But at the same time, we as coaches have got to work to balance that, to avoid arrogance and cockiness. There's a difference. And I think of all the people that I was with, my family, my parents, my brothers and sister helped me incredibly in that, but also my coaches. With the world that around me was coming and patting me on the back and saying I'm the greatest wrestler ever. I knew better, but they didn't know some of the other people. You know, I'm on the Olympic team and get a gold medal just like Dan Gable. They don't know Dan Gable, they only know me. And I think Dan helped me keep a bunch of that balance, because while he is going, and as we were told last night, win 7 matches and never had a point scored on it. I got the same medal that Dan got that year. Mine's exactly like him, except my name's written on it instead of his. Well, people back home, I'm thinking, man, I wish I could be as convincing in my win as Gable. But everybody back home is telling me how great I am, because they don't know what else to compare me to. And probably there's some things that God put in my place to really kind of humble me and keep me in line when the temptation was constantly there to start looking down at me. And man, I guess that's one of the things that I struggled with all along. I don't want to take and assume that I'm an authority just because of that name, of that success, at that one time. And in essence, that's about what that Olympic thing just has this mystique about it. And when you get it, it's like, forget everything else that ever happened. You're now authority on all kinds of subjects that you never even knew about before. And people will ask you and assume whatever you say, that's it. Well, we as coaches can be just super helpful to a kid in balancing, initially building him up in confidence, but when he wins and starts getting some success, then we start helping him balance that with all the compliments and ego kinds of things that people in the community and his classmates in the school might do to him. So I say that I am constantly working at that both in my coaching, but also in my own life. And I'd urge you to remember that as well. God's Word, the Bible, has helped me incredibly because I want to look and say, hey, what is something that's proven, that has stood the time, and been proven time after time? And I find repeatedly statements and things said in the Bible are things that are proven, that are definite. And God has said, hey, this is the way it's going to be. The book of Proverbs is just something extremely practical that I constantly urge wrestlers to be looking and reading. Very practical kinds of things. And one of them, simply, probably my most common quoted proverb to wrestlers is this: foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. And I've applied that to wrestling repeatedly. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a wrestler, but the correction of his coach, sometimes his teammates, and even his opponents will drive it from him, if he'll let them. A lot of times, we don't want to let anybody else drive it out. I'd say this: foolishness is bound in the heart of coaches too. We better always be looking to let someone else teach and instruct us and guide us in those things in the right way. Okay, now, we'll do some things on roles. And I already did yesterday a little bit of that introduction with that idea of getting down low and protecting. You can see a quick stand-up all the time for people who are not the fastest is going to be a struggle. And it's not like I'm saying that I am slow and God didn't give me any quickness. He did. But I'm certainly not as quick as a lot of people I have wrestled through the years. And so when that happens, I started to look at other things that I could do to still get the position. And a couple little thinkings that I have is this: the clinch on top and the ref blows the whistle. As soon as the ref blows and I start to come up like this, he immediately puts all of his guns forward to drive me down to stop that stand-up. So occasionally, when I'm really sensing that, man, this guy's just a bull driving me to my nose, I will take and do something like this. I will wait real solid like this and let him drive forward. Now, when he realizes, hey, I'm not going up like I did maybe 5 times before, he will settle back. And when he settles back to adjust, I'm immediately doing it. So it's a delayed stand-up. It's a delayed quick stand-up. You see, what I told you before, yesterday, of Grady Penninger making his statement, it was quick stand-ups every time. And if you're quick, great. My guess is he was always looking for quick wrestlers in all of his recruiting. Well, I'm thankful that Coach Nichols didn't just look for quick wrestlers. He looked for wrestlers sometimes that were gnarly. I asked him years later, I said, why did you get me? Why did you recruit me? Gave me partial scholarship. And I asked him why, about 4 or 5 years later. And he says, well, I don't really remember a lot about you, Ben, except for one thing. I watched one match of you, and you went immediately for a pin. I liked your aggressiveness. He didn't say anything about my quickness, didn't say anything about my strength or build or anything. He just says, you were aggressive and went for a pin, and I liked that. I said, well, when did I go for a pin? I was wrestling freestyle, and I went for a pin with a cross body ride and a guillotine. I went straight across my back and lost 2 points to get 3 in against my opponent. And he liked it. That was the only 3 points I scored. I got beat 9-3. Now, when I do this delay and come back up like this and go quick to my stand-up, it is a great place, though, also to set up my rolls. Now, I'm going to show you a couple little things that I do here on setup for rolls. The first one being that when I, whether it's a delay or quickness, I come to this point and I feel him driving into me. I will cut right back underneath him and go to our great Peterson, okay? I guess that's what most of you around here would call a Peterson. I have had to do this different times. People ask me, will you teach us the Peterson roll? And I say, well, what do you call a Peterson roll? Because there are different places around the country that call different moves, different rolls in Peterson. But I believe that's the one that's most common. But from that position, I'm up, and then when he drives, I'm right back underneath, and usually to that position right there. Okay? So I'll do justice here as best I can, I guess, to the Peterson first. Another thing that I'll do is this. I come like this without bringing the feet up. I won't even step up. I'll just simply come like this, and I call this the bow setup. It's like and I'll immediately come back down. Only when I come back down, I'm going to come from the arm. So okay, I'm up, I'm right back down and underneath it. You say, why did you do this? The guy's got his wrestle here, okay? As soon as I start coming up, he starts forcing his hands forward, ready to lock. And all I'm looking to do is to get him to commit his hand. When he commits his arm, I come back down and take it. If he commits this one, I'll go to the shoulder. I reach back as far as I can and then push back into it. I want to mention this to the kids because what they'll try to do with this is they'll try to pull it. That's when they lose it. Instead, here, push back into it. Okay? So that becomes, to me, a very good setup is I'm up, down here, drive in. Or if the other hand goes through more, I'm up here, I cut here, and go. Okay? Another setup from yesterday's sit switch is you start doing some sit switches where you're trying to get out of the way like this. You find that guys will start crowding and driving over the top of you. And so as I come out like this, he comes up over me, and I may never be able to get my hip out from under this far. He's driving his shoulder too fast, too hard. And I cut right back underneath. So it becomes fake and right back underneath, and then roll through it. Okay? Those are some of the setups, certainly not all of them. Let me go to the feet. In the feet position here, you get to your feet, the guy has his hands locked. Now, I make a confession here about myself, and I watch this on the guys that I'm coaching today, because some of them, I would watch from this position immediately looking to get their escape. They get the shot back, they take that. But I found this in my own coaching, my own wrestling, and now I find it as a coach, that some guys do not want to get away. In fact, if they do, it's just that they're scared. They just want some freedom. But they don't have the confidence and the skill out here to outdo every opponent they're with. And I literally found myself grabbing a hold of a guy and holding him here. He wanted to get up and let go. After I got a little reputation of doing some rolls, it was like, man, I'm gluing this guy in, and he's just running away from me. And at that point, I say, hey, I've got too strong a reputation for doing rolls. I may have to do something else, but he's not getting away because he's beating me on the takedowns. And over again, I found that I could stay with people, but I couldn't beat them here. Well, I still wanted to win, so I got to find another way to do it. I did find this. My brother John, when we were in college together, we were different. Then we started wrestling freestyle together, and boy, these guys in freestyle, they become so defensive and so stalling oriented, just kind of waiting for something. And I'm out here trying to get into them, and it's not, you can't get through that barrier of shields that they set up in front of you to just keep you away. And so I began to find at times that I'd be trying to do something, and I'd end up being half sideways, almost like this, or coming here. And instead of whizzing and running out away from this, I turned like this. And John, he started just getting irate at me. He hadn't learned rules very well. In fact, now he does. He does lots of rules and teaches them some to the kids he's coaching to. But later on, he figured out that they were valued. But initially, he didn't like that. He didn't have the background in Iowa State of roles that I got where I learned all of this. And I remember him getting mad and saying, "Man, what was you doing? You turned your back in the middle of the match. You just let him get behind you." Well, I didn't let the guy get behind me. I just didn't fight as hard as sometimes. And literally, the point got to be this. There were times that I would rather be in this position than I would be in front facing him. Because now at least I have a hold of him. And my hips are in deep. I couldn't do that here. His defense is all up. But now, his defense wasn't up. Now I get my hip in. Now I can actually do some rolls. And from here, we do some of the same kinds of things. We may arch out like this, then cut right back in, go to the leg, and we'll go again. Okay? And again, that's in the tight Peterson roll idea where we're either coming through into a gravity cradle or a Peterson cradle. Okay? Let me make a comment on this before I go on. I'm going to show you then a whole series of other kinds of rolls. Is this finish? We're ripping you up in that. Watch. Turn your back to the screen. There you go. At this point, kids will always, they need some coaching on this. I have found through the years, this is a very difficult place to pin good people. So people, you'll get them. You see guys do Granbys, they'll pin people here. I find in college, this is not a common pinning combination at all, even with guys who do Granbys. They get back points. And this is what I found. When I went with a good kid, I could get points here, and I would get this position, always keeping my hip off the mat, and then sagging it. I tear the heels out of my shoes because I always pull like this to make myself heavy going that way. Clint doesn't like that. He'd much rather have me here than pulling like that. So have your kids drill doing that and pulling down and sagging away. I tell them this, you get this, get it tight, just secure your pin. Excuse me, secure your near fall. The referee's checking, now is this full control? That usually takes him more than it should take. Then he gets down and starts counting. And I say, hey, you should do it much sooner because I want that 5 seconds to be done as quick as I can. I get my 3 if I can. Here. Now, guys want to go here. If they know a good headlock finish, this can be okay. But too often, particularly young kids, I never teach this to the young kids. And I kind of police it bad, really hard, with kids who have a lot of headlock knowledge. Because what happens when I go here, I give Clint the opportunity to drive me over. I've seen that happen too many times. I had it happen to me. So I'm down here. If I do go for the head, I always tell people I play football. I'm a quarterback, and his head's the ball. And I grab at it like this, and then I rock up this way. But again, you don't do that to good people. Now, there's too much that he can do to stop that. So this is what we do instead. We turn the hip the other way, keep the wrist, and we start turning here, always keeping the arm tight, and twerking it here until we actually get front break. When guys say which leg you pick, I don't care. Either one is fine once you get the head. Whichever one makes you the most comfortable. But that meticulous way of finishing may mean the difference between getting a point and getting a pin. And sometimes it may be the difference between getting some points at the end of a match and looking good and getting enough for your kid to win the big match. Is have him patiently go through this whole sequence here, and work through here. Getting the back points and then coming through this point where he goes to the floor. Okay? And that may take 20, 30 seconds. But to me, it's a very certain, conservative way of getting my reversal, get my near fall, then go for the pin. Okay. Now, I want to give you a little survey of different directions. Probably where I've had the most fun has been rolling. And the typical roll in Iowa that I saw years ago, and I've asked a couple of you coaches here, is this still as common as it used to be? And I get the impression probably not, but still stronger than in most states. And I went to Wisconsin, and I started trying to show kids something other. And I say this, when I first went to Wisconsin, I worked out for almost 2.5 years at the University of Wisconsin. In the 2 seasons that I went through the whole season, I only remember 2 times in those whole 2 seasons that anything other than a quick stand-up was taught. On 2 different occasions. One day it was about 25 minutes. Switches and rolls were taught. The other time was about 45 minutes. Switches and rolls were taught. I was in that room for over 2 years, and it's the only 2 times I ever remember anything ever being taught other than quick stand-up. You say, well, that's kind of limited wrestling, isn't it? Now, maybe some of you would say, hey, that's my philosophy. Well, that's your philosophy. That was there. You know why they had those 2 days taught? They asked me to teach it so they could figure out what in the world the Iowa wrestlers were doing. When I came over to wrestle Iowa schools, I always got in trouble with those guys doing those moves. They just let them go as fast as they can. And they wanted to know what I was doing. They had no intention of learning it. Not at all. It was part of the thing from their mind. Now, I haven't been over there to see what, check out Barry Davis and what he's doing now since he became the coach. But this was Dwayne Clement. He was very successful in the 70s. I had 3 national champions one year. I couldn't, say, hey, you're nuts. But his philosophy drove me crazy. I said, man, alive, why you just stand all day long doing single leg takedowns? Man, that was it. Single leg takedowns, stand up. Single leg takedowns, stand up. Nothing on riding. What do you want to ride for? Just let the guy go so you can take him down again. And for a while, they were doing very well. And they did very well for about 4 to 5 years until they had all these new kids coming in, and everybody in the country understood what they were doing. And the young kids never got the confidence of the older ones. And if you found that the case in your with your philosophy, you understand this. It may have worked real good for a while, but now everybody expects it. And before they figured it out, your first crew did real well. Make some adjustments for the new guys to come with some surprises. Okay. Now, initial rolls to me, wrist control here. And I'm going to show you this, though I don't major on this as much in my own wrestling. I am majoring more on it in coaching now, though, today. Is this elbow goes real tight right there. Okay? But let me show you where I first learned a roll. I'm going to do this because I want you to see how quickly and tight I turn this here. You know, you had an incredible statement made last night. I don't know, Myron Roderick made a statement about Iowa wrestling that, hey, by the way, you guys better watch out. You better fight pride over that. You know the statement I'm talking about? A guy from Oklahoma that used to coach down there is telling you that you have the best wrestling program from top to bottom of any state in the nation. Now that can make you extra confident and proud of that, but it also better keep you from working. I'll just say this, because maybe I appreciate it. I was thoroughly enjoyed my time here in Iowa. But in the late 70s, I kept having Iowa wrestlers tell me how great Iowa wrestling was. And I was on a world team with 5 men who either came from Wisconsin or went to school or went to college in Wisconsin. One of our world teams had 5 Wisconsin, actually 4 of us were Wisconsin natives and 1 was from out of state. And I would tell the Iowa guys who were always beating me down, say, how in the world did you ever get good at in wrestling? It was only because you came to Iowa and learned how to wrestle. And I said, well, how about the other 4 then? No, there have been some times that Iowa's done, maybe have done the same thing, I don't know. But it was just incredible to see that we had those 5 guys all from the state. And I was probably the one that was least connected to the state of Wisconsin in wrestling, except for that high school upbringing. Well, Myron Roderick made that statement, and I can't imagine that he really, goes around and tells everybody else that. But I learned this move, I learned to roll because of Oklahoma State and Myron Roderick's instruction. It was an elite try. They rolled like this. They hooked the leg here, and as soon as they get in trouble, they go down here and hang out like this. And then the ref would say something after 40 minutes of wrestling, they'd come up. and then as soon as you try to do anything, you can go up and try to get a whizzer on it. Back down here. And it was just back and forth doing that. It drove us nuts. And here the Iowa State wrestlers saying, hey, whoop those guys. I don't care how much they want to play the lead ride. We'll wrestle with it. Just hang on us. And I had one of our wrestlers in our room was doing this to me one day. And he was hooking that leg the same way. And I said, man, how will I stop you on this thing? He told me 2 things. His first thing is this. You got to get it out. Cut it here and pull it out. Guys, I was sitting here. Can't get it out. Just turn the hip right there. And through. That goes to my sit switch idea too. But he was going to teach me something better. He said, just post your knee, or post your foot, and then bring your knee up into his gut. Right here. And keep going until you can catch his knee right there. And then do a crane. Look, I'm going to throw you off the mat like you did. Tony is right here. This is where I learned my first roll. Here. Can't let that foot move. See, at this point, it's heavy, so he can't move it anymore. He tries pushing in. I just real protected here. Right there. I want you to notice, I'm looking for this knee. And I always call this crazy cradle. Why would you ever do a cradle with your foot or your leg caught in it? But it is very nasty. When I rest up, laying right across his groin right through here. It's not a comfortable move for him. Well, I still do this because it teaches guys tight arm, protect the head, turn hard in. Right there. Okay? So I still have guys doing that because I want them to not do this. This arm should never go here. It always goes there. And you do this to him. And say this, you can slug him once, you can punch him repeatedly. Okay? And I don't know if there's any referees here, probably are. I don't think, I've never had any of them call me or my wrestlers on that. Hard ones and little ones. I mean, it's got not being malicious, okay? Or to his face. But hard here and go. Okay? So here, tight here, protect your face. And go. And you're up, full crane. Gotcha. Okay. That's where I learned the initial turning in and protecting myself here. Then I began to put this hand control with it. Don't need that leg anymore. I just go straight here. Okay? Now, all those little turns are very typical to Iowa rolling, been around for decades. But I ended up doing something, and I think, you remember yesterday I made a comment about the extension and learning in front of a blocking sled in my backyard with my brother? I think I was so used to that, I had to find other ways to use it in my wrestling. And so, if there's anything new and different that I don't see a lot of people teaching in rolls, it's this idea here. Instead of turning in like this, you gotta have guys in that position, they're driving you forward. They're trying to stop that. And then I go straight forward. I extend my legs and go right back out to my elbow. Right there. I use that last little place where I can lift 1,000 pounds. Is at that last little place. I'm not way down here where I have power. I got to get to there. Then I can thrust. Now, that doesn't mean I start up here. It just means that when I start, I'm slow, but I'll finish strong and actually doing this. He's 45 pounds heavier than me. I won't impress you, but I am throwing him almost halfway across the mat, the opposite side of me. When I hook him here, he's on that side. When he's done, he's laying over there on his back. And that little extension is, I don't know what I say, short wrestlers just don't have as much extension as us longer ones do. And again, kind of the thought yesterday, a taller wrestler who will get his legs in thrust may find this easier to do because he doesn't run out of extension so quick. If I run out of extension and he's not over, this kind of thing may happen, and maybe like this. And he's out of position, he isn't over yet. And at this point, my legs are extended here, I just start choking. It's kind of like that. You have a punch, and then you have little jabs. And I always think of that. You'll have a move will tend to do this. It'll have one big thrust in the middle of it, but it always needs follow-up. And that's true whether you're doing a single, double, or you're doing this. Okay, now, you look at the counters that Clint can do in riding and stopping a roll. Now, I want you to notice something. I didn't talk about going this side. Most every high school kid learns to do this here, where he tries to grab the elbow, and he pushes to the side right there. And I always say this, I will never drill that with my wrestlers. I think the ease of countering it is so definite that it's not worth spending a lot of time. Maybe we should spend a little bit of time on it to, make the young guys build some confidence with something that takes almost no extra thinking. You say roll, and most people think, you push your behind down there and you roll over like this. And I tell you what, I can't hardly move without doing everything. When you get the big guys, you have to do extra things. But the guy who's so-so, you just grab a hold like this and you push over there, he falls down, rolls over. You got it. Well, it's too easy to counter that. And the way people will counter it is this. They'll sag way back like this, or they'll step the foot way around like this. So if Clint tries going to that roll, and it's up here, I'm gonna laugh at you. You're in trouble. You better make readjustments, or I'm gonna be in good position to start looking for pinning, turning moves. So this direction here, the only thing I do is I lean that way to see where I should go. Okay? Now, I'm doing this, and you go ahead and grab this and go forward. Go ahead and go forward. Go back again. You guys see something different from what he did when I did? stepping this knee out, and I'm lunging. You know what the deal is on that? You only have the one leg to extend. This is a very good idea that a lot of people use and I use. Now what I'm showing you. I'm exaggerating everything to get you to thrust out. And when I want to really do it quick, this isn't going to give me extra power. So there, just thrust straight forward, and then, okay? Now, since my old Dale Bar just hounded me repeatedly, then you're always going to the shoulder. So I'd say to you now, if you went to your shoulder, just to put that elbow on the mat, so that when you're done, you're sitting here instead of there. Come to here. Okay? Good. Good kid. I'm going to make a rest of it. Okay. So you immediately made that adjustment, stick kept up high. And I would want to do that with the wrestlers. He wants to work this, he'd want to do it with his wrestlers now. Okay, now, when I start doing that down here, it's still too predictable. I began to figure out, hey, Peterson's going forward. And what I've had to do is start changing this. I had talked about, here we can turn in here. We can do the lazy, turn your sister kind of move over here, or I can go straight forward. But then I'll also turn this way, and I'll go there. And I'll do that particularly when put your foot way up over there. I mean, he's ready. Guys who like to do leg riding, they're stepping up behind you. And when that foot comes up around like that, I was looking to say, if I can see the foot, I'm going to run away from it. I want you to notice what happened to that foot. I'll do it again, but watch what happens to that leg. It starts here, it finishes extending, rolling there. And I'll tell guys this. You're up in northern Wisconsin, there's a lot of logging up there. And not as many hills as in Pennsylvania, or some of the places out east or out west. But you can imagine cutting a tree down up in the top of the hill, and you're going to roll the log down to the bottom of the hill where the truck is. Well, if the log has got two limbs on it like this, you got some work ahead of you. Every time you want to roll the thing, you got to lift it up over and put it back down. Lift it back up, put it back down. So you say, hey, if you're a logger and you don't cut those limbs off, you're going to get very strong, but you won't be in a business long. You better cut them off. Well, again, referees don't let me cut his limbs off. But they don't say anything about folding them. And so when a guy's got his limbs out, I got to fold him down. And then I used to try to do all kinds of things on the feet. I try to kick them out of the way. Well, here, it's up here. I just go away from it. I get the same thing. Okay? So now, I can go any place out here. But then, you get some guy who floats. And again, leg riders, notorious for this. You got to go even more than that. And so instead of just turning and thrusting, I spin. Go ahead and spin too. I spin. And I don't know how far I might have to go. And then thrust. And so I tell kids, just keep spinning underneath till you get the guy out of position. Okay? So it may look like this. I'm here, and Clint's going to try to chase me and keep his angle behind. And I'm just spinning here until I can thrust. Now that wasn't as slick and clean at the end, but he was extended. So I was able to roll him to his back. And there are times that you'll see kids do that, where they will go in a circle 3, 4, 5 times. And they just keep spinning. And that's all right, just keep going. And I do this, in teaching this, I'll get them started, and I say, now you go until you see me. And I'll take off running around that kid as fast as I can. And make him just keep spinning until he sees me, then he can thrust. So we roll all the way around the circle. There's no direction we can't go. And again, how do you build confidence in this kind of thing? I'll tell you how I did. You remember things special with certain people that are special to you. I know I built confidence with that beginning one where I turned up and in, but the place where rolls just kind of that stuck in me for life was all alone in a practice room with John. John was very good at legs. He was a good rider. He was good at pinning, but much better on his feet, I think. So when we would go with each other, he would get 2 takedowns, maybe 3, and I'd get 1, 1.5. I was maybe 50% of what he was doing. And so, you know what, I had to make him count. When I took him down, I better turn him. Well, John got too slick on the bottom position, and I didn't turn a lot. And we're going freestyle a lot of times with each other, and some will block for 15 seconds, and he's gone. He's back up. And I'm looking and saying, man, I'm in trouble. Now, I only remembered this happening when it was just the 2 of us in the wrestling room. Never when other people were there. The coach was there. Used coaches would never see this happen. This is the kind of thing that happens behind the scenes with two wrestlers, often brothers, but certainly not all the time, by any means. But it was exaggerated for me because it was my brother. I'm doing this. John's getting 2 takedowns. I'm getting 1. John's getting 3, and maybe I'm getting 2. And I get 1 roll. And John falls down on his side, or he's down here, and I have pinned him. Now, all of those takedowns that he'd outdone me on, I erased. I walked back to the center, ready to go, feeling pretty good about myself, but also saying, oh boy, I think I made him a little bit mad. But I was just thinking about it so far. I hadn't fully understood yet. Only very occasionally did this happen. I turned my back, and this is what I would hear. I knew you get that roll! You've done it anyway! And then he would stand face me and ready to take down. Now, maybe you didn't all understand what I said, since I was clenching my fist and gritting my teeth. John was saying, I knew you were going to get that roll. You got it anyway. He was trying to hold it inside. He didn't want to say that. He didn't want to let it out. But it built up. You know, I just sprinkled those things, maybe once every 2 days. I'd get him on that. He'd probably say once a week. Well, whatever it was enough. That it erased everything else, and he would admit to me that even though he knew exactly what I was going to do, I got it anyway. Well, the problem is he didn't know which way I was going to go. Most people do their move one direction. And you notice what John did? He turned the corners. He changed direction. Instead of going in and up, he went down in a circle. And that's what began to kill people. All kinds of things where you change off direction. I do duck unders. I do duck unders and just go behind. I do duck unders and turn corners. And we're relentless in coaching guys on that. Because I want them to change direction. They just swing around behind the do vulnerable. Well, here, if I'm just trying to do a roll in the same position all the time, it's not good. And when guys push one way, I'm always trying to get to the other side. I'll get out at the angle. I do that in countering the takedowns. I'm doing it now down here in my rolls. Get an angle. So even if you don't get all the little intricacies or the angles or the directions that I'm talking about here, think of how you can get your kids to do rolls more than just one side, one direction. And please, if you take any of my thinking, get this. Side, S-I-D-E, is a 4-letter word that should never be connected with the word roll. It's not in the vocabulary. And I tell guys when they talk about doing a S-I-D-E roll, I say, hold it just a second. No, we don't talk about that because it's so limited. It's only used as a set. Fake that way and see what the guy's going to do to counter. Then go. And that's what to me that is very very useful. Just down here, it's lean like this and watch what he does. Is he going to sag out that way? Is he going to start stepping around behind? Is he going to float and try to get legs? Well, a cross-body ride man knows how to get in legs when he counters every move the bottom man does. So he stands up, sits out, switches, goes. He's got to counter for all of them. So you'll sense that. When you go here, you'll sense whether that guy, he's a cross-body ride. He's going to start looking to hook the legs in. Then you decide which way you want to go there. Okay, same thing on the feet. At this point, I'll lean here. And then they'll get underneath. Got that leg right there. Bunch said, no way. You're not going to let me get back it that way. If you did bring it in, when I sag here, guys will do this. Pull up with this arm. So you don't, then I could actually step behind. I would never do this on a guy this much bigger. Okay? But from here, set him backwards or go to the typical roll to the SID. Because the Peterson roll, you do that. You go down and roll over that side. Okay? That's why my bad mouth so much, I guess. Okay, the other is I lean to this side. Now, I'll actually, when I sense very often this guy pulls back, he doesn't want me over there, he pulls there, then I turn and extend. Like that. Incredible the power and explosiveness you can get in that. I literally do this. I lean and take off running and then lunge. So, I learned this. I always lean to the outside of the mat. I couldn't do this in the center. I never made mats big enough for the big guys. I made mats maybe, then I made big enough for the little guys, the little weights. But I said this, I had to position myself, walk over here. And by then he was trying to pull me back in thinking, hey, I'll look good. This guy wants to get off the mat. And he pulled back and I took off. And it's gone. And guys understand that, it's great. You may ask this, do you ever do forward roll that way? Very little, because see, his power is to drive straight forward. And if I tried to do this, he gets his legs in position, he could drill me right flat in my face. And I don't prefer that. Okay. Okay. This next little one is let's have a little fun here. You guys remember Chris Taylor. I had the privilege of wrestling at Iowa State with Chris Taylor. Initially, I did not consider it a privilege. I was the second biggest man in the room for at least 6 months. So you can guess who did a lot of wrestling with Chris. Now, Chris is 425 pounds. Well, give or take, depending on what his breakfast and lunch and supper was. Chris used to say that I ate more than him. I did eat meals at times more than Chris, but Chris ate all day. We kidded about that often. But anyway, Chris, great-natured guy. You know, when I first met him and he started doing this, he would lift me, lock like this, and he'd lift me in the air. Go ahead, lift me in the air. This is what I do. Okay, just get on. I did that over and over again. I pleaded for mercy and I begged for him to put me back down because I felt like he could take and throw me like a little rubber ball right through the wall, through the window, whatever. No, he would need the window. He'd just throw me through the wall. And so when he would get me in the air, I balled up just like this, and I'd be looking to come down, face down like this. Okay? And Chris was good enough. He was a ton of fun. Always laughing and kidding around. And he was polite enough to put me back down. What he was doing is he was scaring the wits out of me, but not scaring the move out of me. And after a while, I began to have this happen. Guys my size would lift me in the air. And I start turning like this, and they're going to put me down. They put me down, I got the wrist hold right up. So after a while, I started actually saying, well, I can't wait for them to lift me. I just started jumping. I call this a nosedive roll. I'm cautious in teaching this to people at times because it scares the kids out. But I'll tell you this, what I do is I jump in the air and I dive straight for that foot. And it's like this, up, dive. I have yet to find any problem in doing that because when I go down with this arm, he has to roll forward or he just plows his face right into the back. Every once in a while, I'm often asked to do by the school assemblies. I'll wrestle in front to just get the kids off ask for volunteers, and they'll volunteer kids. They want to see their classmates get thrown. Well, I was doing this actually Sunday morning in a little kids' children's church program in Milwaukee, and the leader of this group was like 6'6", and he was just a horse. And I was showing this move. And I'd done a few other things with him, and he's kind of stiff, and he'd never wrestled before. But we were having a good time. Kids were enjoying it. And so I decided I was going to jump in the air with a little of his help. And I decided I was going to go that way. He decided I was going to go that way. And, oh man, broke my wrist on the way down. And I hurt for weeks afterwards. And I thought, well, if you're going to let the guy bring you in the air, you better let him decide which way you're going to go. So I had only drilled that way. I'd always gone and drilled this way. And that day, I told him what I was going to do. So he went up and he decided he was going to help me. He just helped me the wrong way. But having fun with this, you just turn and cut down. It's kind of like, this, but I'm usually over the leg this way. This is out here. And just make him forward roll. I had a coach way along Lake Michigan. Said that he used to get his kids in the morning, come in for an earlier practice a couple days a week. He says, all we did is roll around with legs. And he says, I usually try to do this, get the older guys to go with the young kids. And I tell them, make sure you don't beat them up. And I says, I'm letting them build confidence and letting the young kids figure out what's going on. And that's the way I suggest you teach and coach roles in series like this. Is initially, there's a lot of mechanics in it. Let the older guys do it on the younger guys, but make sure that you instruct them, hey, this is not the time to beat up and destroy the young kid, make you feel good. Instead, let them learn. I conclude, and our time is about up, by telling you a little situation. We've all got into this. My brother John, about 2 weeks later than this, he had his first practice, I believe, or it was just before his first practice, about 6 years ago. He had, I think, 3 returning. John's an assistant coach, not the head coach, but he had 3 or 4 returning state qualifiers, and he was very positive about the team through the summer, except for one thing. He'd gone to the state tournament, and the senior of that group, the leader, had gotten in trouble by breaking a school rule on drinking. And there needed to be some discipline over it that was clearly spelled out by the school. The parents had gotten upset and had to try to get the school to change their enforcement of this policy with their son. And the school administration and the athletic department and coaches, and it wasn't just the wrestling coach, it was the baseball coach in the spring that was also involved in this. And they said, no, this is a printed rule. He knew it ahead of time. We need to enforce it. And so I obviously got hot. I all steamed up. And so what this guy had done is he'd gone around and talked to his upperclassmen, and he had convinced all of them they shouldn't go out to wrestling. And instead of him having these 4 state returning qualifiers, I think he ended up with 1, maybe 2 of them at most. But he also lost some other juniors and seniors. And there was like 5 kids who weren't going to wrestle, and they never came up. I think 1 out of the whole group that boycotted the wrestling team did. John called me about, after he told me about this problem, he called me a week later and he says, oh man, this is going to be the longest season we've ever had. But about 3 weeks later in December, I called him up and I says, John, you haven't said anything. I expected some calls from you. It must be going bad. And he goes, almost chuckled. He says, oh, Ben, it's going great. I said, what do you mean? How can it be going great after you said it was going bad? This is what he said. He says, Ben, this is a school that we went to many moons ago, okay? He says, every time I've come into this school, it seems for years, and now he's been coaching there now for since '91 on the coaching staff. He says, every year we fight this. The upperclassmen beat down the underclassmen. It's kind of a initiation. When you get to my place, then you can do that to the young kids. And he says, we don't have that anymore. He says, I have fought that ever since I came back here and the community and help with this team. This is like we can't get it out of them. Every year, no matter what we do, these upperclassmen are beating down the young kids. He says, we don't have that anymore. He says, now all we have is these young kids that can't learn enough. They're sponges. And here John was crying so bad before the season was over. Their team had meshed together as an entire unit instead of a few top dogs and then the others who came along and hopefully someday would do all right. And I always tell the upperclassmen this: you guys do all you can to encourage and teach the young guys, because someday they will break your records. And they will often say to me, I don't want that to happen. And I say this, now, so you're wanting, when you graduate from your school, you never want your school to ever do better than you were able to muster up. And I tell them this, he says, I know, later on you will be glad, in fact you'll even be embarrassed sometimes that your school goes so long to break your records. They should be able to do that. And you say, well, I got second in the state tournament. It took 10 years before Cumberland High School had a state champion. And you think I was happy when they did? Oh man, I was elated. I wanted Cumberland to have a bunch of state champions. I didn't care if they went past me. They're always saying, oh, Ben was the highest place winner. Baloney. Give us state champions, and the more the merrier. And when you get these guys to understand and do that, you'll have wrestling that keep growing, developing along the way. But I tell you what, you know what happened 4 years later? 3 years later, John found those same kids that tried to do the same thing, and he had to go and confront them and say, Seth, what are you doing? You're not beating those guys down. You weren't beat down when you were freshmen. Once we got rid of those upperclassmen, why are you putting yourself back in that place? That's not how this team meshed together. And 3 years later, they had not 4 qualifiers, they had 3 place winners, and one of them was a champion. And so John is looking and saying, it was a good decision to stand our ground. You guys, stand your ground and keep building everybody. That's our goal. I hope my statements and my instruction here have been a help to you in all of that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I did run off some more of Coach Peterson shades if you need some. And at this time, I'd like Teresa Hilder to come up. The rest of you that will be passing cards throughout the group, make sure you sign it. That's for the door.